You know those stories, the ones we all grew up with? The epic poems, the sacred texts, the very first chapters of the Bible? What if they aren't just allegories? What if they're actually fragmented memories of a history that's far more real and way more spectacular than we've ever dared to imagine?
The book of Genesis, it talks about giants roaming the earth, mighty men of old. The Sumerians had a name for them too, the Nephilim. For thousands of years, we've just chalked this up to myth. But what if it wasn't a myth at all? What if it was just a simple, literal description of beings who weren't from around here?
And that really raises the biggest question of all, doesn't it? What if we're supposed to read our oldest texts not as fables, but as actual eyewitness accounts? A chronicle of Earth that begins way before us, with the arrival of visitors from the heavens.
What's pretty amazing is how modern science and the Bible seem to point to the exact same spot on the map for where our story begins. The Garden of Eden, described as being near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, that's Mesopotamia. The infamous Tower of Babel? Well, archaeologists have literally dug up its foundations in ancient Babylon, right in modern-day Iraq. The stage for this whole epic was a very real place. And it was right there, in that exact land, that archaeologists stumbled into one of the biggest puzzles in history, the Sumerians, a civilization that just explodes onto the world stage, seemingly from nowhere, and presents a mystery that baffles us to this day.
And let's be really clear here. This was not some slow, gradual evolution. Around 3800 BC, Sumer just appears, not as a primitive culture finding its feet, but as a fully formed, highly sophisticated civilization. Cities, laws, incredible technology. It was all there, overnight. There was nothing like it before. It just was.
And the things they accomplished are just staggering. They gave us the very first system of writing, the first schools, the first senates, complex legal codes, even recipes for bread and beer. They built massive structures with stunning architectural precision. The real question isn't just what they knew, but how. How in the world did this sudden, impossible leap forward happen?
Well, believe it or not, the Sumerians actually had an answer they were very careful to write down on thousands of clay tablets. They claimed their civilization wasn't their own invention at all.
They said it was a gift, handed down to them by these incredibly powerful beings who came from the sky. Beings they worshipped as gods, but who, based on their own descriptions, sound a whole lot like something else.
They called them the Anunnaki. And the name? Well, it tells the whole story right there. In ancient Sumerian, it means, quite literally, those who from heaven to earth came. And just look at how the Sumerians show them to us. These are not angels with harps. We're talking about beings wearing helmets with goggles, strange suits with hoses attached, and carrying what look like powerful weapons. They traveled in what the text calls sky chambers or flying boats. Their very symbol for a god looked kind of like a modern pilot's headset. So you have to ask, were these gods or were they astronauts? If you look at it that way, everything starts to look different. Even the story or the Tower of Babel. The Bible says it was an act of human arrogance. But the name in the original language, Bab-Eli, it doesn't mean place of confusion. It means gateway of the gods, a place for them to arrive and depart. You know, like an ancient spaceport.
Okay, so if they were visitors, they had to come from somewhere, right? Well, the Sumerian texts, if we read them this way, are pretty explicit about that too. Their heaven wasn't some spiritual place. It was a specific, physical planet.
For thousands of years, humanity knew about 7 celestial bodies: the sun, moon, and the 5 visible planets. But the Sumerians, thousands of years earlier, they depicted our solar system with 12. Their records somehow include Uranus, Neptune, and even Pluto, planets we didn't officially discover until the last couple of centuries. But their count is still 12, so why?
Because this theory argues they included the sun, the moon, and 10 planets. Their texts insisted there was one more, a massive rogue planet, the home of the Anunnaki, that comes swinging into our inner solar system on this huge elliptical orbit. And according to these ancient records, this 12th planet takes 3,600 Earth years to make a single orbit. Now, if that's true, that one detail could explain so much. It explains why the gods would appear, set things up, and then vanish for thousands of years. To them, 3,600 of our years was just one of theirs. That was the secret to their so-called immortality.
The Sumerian creation story describes this huge war in the heavens.
But when you read it this way, it wasn't a war between gods, it was a war between planets. It talks about an invader, they called it Marduk, the 12th planet, that got pulled into our solar system. It slammed into an ancient planet named Tiamat, shattering it. One half became the asteroid belt, which the Bible calls the hammered bracelet. The other half, along with Tiamat's moon, got knocked into a new orbit, and it became Earth. This isn't just a myth, it's a stunningly accurate description of celestial mechanics.
So why come here? Why travel across the solar system to this broken half of a world? The Sumerian texts are brutally honest about this. They didn't come here as enlightened teachers. According to the story, they came here as miners.
Just look at this proposed timeline. The Anunnakis supposedly arrived almost 500,000 years ago. For over 100,000 years, their own people were toiling away in the mines. But eventually, they mutinied. They refused to do the work. So a solution was needed, and their chief scientist, a guy named Enki, he had a pretty radical idea.
The answer was to create a substitute, a primitive worker. The texts describe a process that sounds an awful lot like genetic engineering, mixing their own DNA with that of an early hominid already on Earth, and the result was a new being designed for just one purpose, to take over the hard labor, to, and I'm quoting here, bear the yoke of the gods.
And all of a sudden, the first book of the Bible just clicks into place in a whole new way. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. This theory argues that was a literal statement. We were made to look like our makers, the Anunnaki. We were created to serve them, to tend their garden, to work their mines, their farms, their cities. By this account, we are, by design, a servant race.
But the story doesn't end there. According to the texts, the Anunnakis stayed on Earth for ages, ruling over their new creation. And their time here was not always peaceful.
After the Great Flood, a cataclysm the Anunnaki knew was coming, humanity was nearly wiped out. But with their workforce destroyed, they chose to save a few, the story of Noah, and just restart civilization. They gave us agriculture, they set up human kings to rule in their place, and to stop humanity from ever uniting against them again, they deliberately confused our languages.
Their entire time here was defined by their own squabbles and rivalries. All those ancient myths of gods battling each other, in this view, those were real wars, fought right here on Earth, with humanity caught in the middle, serving as the foot soldiers in the cosmic conflicts of our creators. Which brings us to one final, huge question. The texts say they left, but they also said they would return. So if any of this is true, if we really were created by visitors from a planet that swings by every 3,600 years, then our entire history and our future might just be defined by the ticking of a celestial clock. Are we, right now, just waiting for the kings to come home?